can't buy a property unless you make an offer. Real Estate Lab. All right, so we have underwritten a deal start to finish. We have determined what pricing makes sense for the property. Now it's time to make our offer. This is a really important step. You can't buy a property unless you make an offer. And you want to be tactical and strategic about making your offers. You don't just want to willy-nilly throw out numbers, offend people, turn people off. You want to do it the right way. You want to approach sellers and brokers the right way. And you want to be professional about it. So one of the things we do to be professional about making our offers is we use a letter of intent. Letter of intent. And it's a letter of intent to purchase. It is a very safe, easy way to make an offer without binding yourself to anything. Cool thing about a letter of intent, and I'll explain it a little bit more in depth, is it's a non-binding document. And so what you're watching here on my screen is a LOI, letter of intent or an LOI. And I'm going to walk you through how to fill it out. This is actually something that is available in our Real Estate Lab software in beta. We're making some updates to it currently, so I couldn't access it on the software. But within the next couple of months, we will update this video with one that's actually using it in the software. It's even easier to use in the software than it is to do here. So, but I'm going to show you here on Word just so that you understand how this works and what's going on when we're making offers with a LOI. So, the basis of this is we're trying to explain to the seller what it is we're looking to purchase the property for and what our general terms are going to be for the purchase. And the reason we do this is because the stages of making an offer are we make an offer, they might make a counter offer, ask us to adjust something, we're going to resend the LOI, we're going to agree to it, we're going to sign the LOI, which is, again, is a non-binding document. It's not a binding contract. So you really can't hold anyone to an LOI. It's non-binding, and it says it down here. I'll show you. This LOI is intended to outline the basic terms of an agreement between the parties for the purchase and sale of the reference property. It does not constitute a legally binding agreement with respect to either party. Seller nor buyer are obligated to honor this contract. If the purchase and sale agreement is not ultimately executed, neither party shall have any obligation to one another. So what that means is the LOI is non-binding. It's not a legal contract. You can't sue someone if they don't follow it. If they sign this, you sign this, and the seller signs this, and they change their mind or you change your mind, you're not legally bound to proceeding with any sort of purchase. It's non-binding. So the stages of this, as I said, were you send in an LOI. We get our LOI accepted, assuming that they accept our offer, sign it. What we do is we take this LOI template, we send it to our attorneys now, and now our attorneys are going to draft a purchase and sale agreement, which we talked about right here. Upon execution of this letter of intent, the purchaser and seller shall commence negotiations on a binding purchase and sale agreement. The purchaser and seller shall proceed diligently and in good faith to finalize, agree, and execute on the PSA within 7 business days after LOI execution. Now, a lot of times I've had an LOI accepted, signed, and it takes us longer than 7 days. This is not the end-all, be-all. It's not, hey, we got to do this within 7 days. Hopefully quicker, but most of the time it's going to be 1 to 2 weeks to put a purchase and sale agreement together. And I'm going to go over PSAs in a separate video. Right now we're just talking about LOIs. But the important thing about the LOI is we get to outline a lot of our terms that we want on this deal up front. Not just the purchase price here, but earnest money, time frames, inspection periods, closing period, extensions, all that kind of good stuff. The reason we do this up front, we want to get this agreed upon up front, is because we don't want to run into issues once we go to putting a purchase and sale agreement together. We don't want to run into those kind of issues with negotiating things with the seller and them retrading, coming back, changing their mind. We can say, hey, when we originally agreed to this deal, these are the terms we agreed to, and so this is what's going to go into purchase and sale agreement. So it's a balance. The more detail in here, the better, but at the same time, you want to keep it really concise so that it's easy for them to understand, especially if you're dealing with more mom and pop sellers, which are a lot of the deals that we go after, right? Now, you may choose to edit this and go in and add a bunch of conditions. You can do the same thing in our software. You can add conditions. And that's totally fine too. And I definitely would suggest you do that. Really just in basic form, add conditions if you have special conditions of the closing or the purchase that you're putting together. So let's walk through this. Your company name, address, this date autofills. Here's the seller. I just put in a random person's name. Pleased to present an offer or a letter of intent to purchase Royal Oakland Apartments. This is the deal that we analyzed with the following terms. Here's the purchaser entity. Purchase price. We're going to leave this for now. Purchase and sale agreement. Immediately upon execution, I read this through, so we're going to go through and put a purchase and sale agreement together. Purchase contingent on environmental and title condition acceptable to lender. I like to always put that in so that when we get to the purchase and sale agreement, we can add in some language around the purchase being contingent upon clean environmentals. Earnest money. Total earnest money, $50,000. Earnest money in the amount of $25,000 deposited within 3 business days after execution of a purchase and sale agreement. Additional earnest money in the amount of $25,000 will be deposited within 3 days after the end of the inspection period. So one of the things that we need to define in here is when is it refundable and when is it non-refundable. Sometimes we're going to put in here that it's non-refundable up front. So we might have non-refundable earnest money in the amount of $25,000 will be deposited within 3 business days after execution of a purchase and sale agreement. Additional earnest money in the amount of $25,000 deposited within 3 days after the end of the inspection period. So what this means is that we're putting a deposit right up front when we sign the purchase and sale agreement with the seller. We're going to put $25,000 down, and it's going to be non-refundable. Sometimes we call it hard money, non-refundable or hard money. What that means is that if you back out of the contract, that $25,000 goes to the seller. Unless there's a clause in there where the seller defaulted on the contract, they were not truthful, or they tripped a clause in the actual PSA that allows you to get your earnest money back. Non-refundable means your money's non-refundable, right? There's always outs that you could put in the contract, but typically non-refundable or earnest money is non-refundable. You can make it refundable. Refundable earnest money, and then you could say at the end, all earnest money deposits become non-refundable after the expiration of the inspection period. So what that does is that gives you the inspection period to have your money refundable. So you have your 30-day inspection period to inspect the property with a $25,000 deposit. If you decide in your sole discretion that you don't want to proceed with the purchase, you can back out of the contract and get your money back. So the wording here does matter. The wording matters. Refundable or non-refundable, you're going to want to go in here and make sure that the wording is proper for what you're trying to accomplish. Now, why do we go between refundable and non-refundable? Well, non-refundable money is much more aggressive on an offer. So if you know you want a property, you know you want to buy it, and you're very convinced that it's the right property before you've even had the chance to do a full inspection, and you feel really confident in buying this property, you might be okay putting non-refundable earnest money. I do it all the time. I have to, because I work in very competitive markets where I'm competing with other large buyers. And for me to buy properties and to put properties under contract, it is very standard in this market to use non-refundable earnest money, which is more risky. However, I'm an experienced investor, and I understand the risks associated with that, and I'm willing to take those risks. You may not be. So when you're starting, and especially if you're going after more mom and pop sellers, it is totally fine to do refundable earnest money. However, if you're bidding on market deals with brokers in a competitive market and in a competitive sale environment, non-refundable earnest money is a lot of times expected. So just so that you understand kind of what's market rate and what's not. So moving on, that's earnest money. Moving on, the inspection period. I'd say 30 days is very typical. If you want to get aggressive, do 2 weeks. Normally, that's not enough time to get everything done. 30 days is almost not enough time to get everything done. And normally, the 1 or 2 things that stand out are going to be your environmental inspections, phase 1 environmental report, which we'll go over more during the due diligence chapter. However, 30 days is very common. I almost always do 30 days. This is my typical structure. I do 30 days with a 30-day inspection with a 30-day closing period, so 60 days total. I always give myself an option to extend closing for another 30 days. I always build that in. I put it in the LOI, and I put it in the purchase agreement. Why is that? Is because there are so many uncontrollable variables in closing a property. You know, things may get delayed, COVID happened, this, that, and the other. The bank can't close on time. Always give yourself the ability to extend the contract and you buy yourself some more time. And you're literally buying more time because normally we put additional deposits, small amounts, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 in order to extend the closing for another period of 30 days. Sometimes I'll put 2 extensions if it's a hairy property. When I say hairy, it's not a clean buy. The property maybe has some potential issues we don't know about, and we really want to be safe. So you should be able to close a property within 90 days. It's very typical. 60 days is tough to close on a property within. I think most people try for 60 days and end up hitting the 70 to 90 day mark. Some people longer and some shorter if you're really good and you're doing cash closing or whatever it might be. So seller deliverables. Seller will provide all requested due diligence materials within 2 business days after PSA execution, including a survey. If purchaser is required to have an updated or new survey, seller will pay associated costs. I already read this through. The terms of this LOI are confidential between parties and shall not be disclosed. Again, it's non-binding, so if they decide to disclose them or you decide to disclose them, you're not really liable for it. This LOI shall expire within 7 days. Again, it just puts a little bit of heat on the fire, but it's not binding. So please execute this. Return to, here's my email. Sincerely, David Toupin, your title, and go ahead and PDF this. Is what you're going to do is you're going to save as a PDF, and then you are going to go ahead and sign it, send it over to the respective broker or seller. So that's a general overview of an LOI. Now let's talk a little bit about strategy around sending LOIs. So let's say they're asking, in our example, Royal Oakland, they're asking $3.2 million. In our analysis, we came up with a mid $2 million range on the price. Mid to low $2 millions is what we want to offer. Maybe our max offer is 2.7. And they want 3.2. I'll normally start, depending on how far I am from their asking price. So if they're asking 3.2 and I know I can get up to 2.7, just for example, I might start at 2.65. Let's say they were asking 2.8 and I knew I could get up to 2.7, really close. I might start at 2.4, right? It's a little bit of a negotiation game. The further I am away from their asking price, the more I'm going to start near my maximum allowable offer. Near that max, that top line, this is the most I can pay because I don't want to offend them. I don't want to offer, I really don't. I don't want to offer 2.2 million when they're asking 3.2 million. But if I have to, I will, right? I'm not going to offer a number just to make them happy, just because it's going to offend them. But I'd prefer not to offend them if I have more room. So if I have the ability to go to 2.7 and they're at 3.2, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say, honestly, guys, I'm really maxing out here in the mid 2s. I think I can push my offer up to 2.6, potentially 2.7. That would really be pushing it for me. I know you're asking 3.2 million. I know we're not exactly close, but here's what I could do. 2.65 million. I'm giving you strong terms. I'll give you non-refundable earnest money up front, and I will close on this property within a 60 to 90 day window. And that's kind of how I'll break it down for them if I'm not near their price. If I underwrote this deal and I'm at 2.2 million or 2.1 million, I'm just going to verbally normally tell them, I'll send them over an LOI and I'll say, hey, I'll give them a call. Hey, I am $1 million off from your offer. With all due respect, I think you're asking a really high price for this market and this property. I understand if you don't want to sell near the price that I'm offering, but that's just simply where I'm at. No harm done if it's not acceptable to you. Here's my offer of 2.2 million. Just be honest with people. There is a strategy to it though. And if you're close to where they're asking, if they want 3.2 and I know I can pay 3 million, or if I know I could pay 3.2 million, and it's a great deal, I'm still not going to just give them 3.2 million, right? You want a little bit of a negotiation wise, you want a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a fight for it. Sometimes when people come to such an easy acceptance of an offer within a negotiation, they start to question it. If I am buying this property, the seller wants 3.2 million, and right away I tell them, I'll pay you 3.2 million. Great, we have a deal. They might question themselves. They might think, what if I could have gotten more than 3.2 million? They accepted our offer so easily. Are we giving this property away for too little? So you always want a little bit of a back and forth counter, in my opinion, if you have the time and if you're not in an aggressive time crunch scenario. Always give a little back and forth. If you know you can pay 3.2 for a property that they're asking 3.2 on, I would come in at 2.9 personally, or 2.8. Just say, hey, I'm kind of at 2.8 right now. I don't know if I can get much higher than 2.8 million. And they might say, well, we don't want to go below 3.1. You say, all right, well, how about we meet at 2.975 and I'll give you a higher earnest money deposit. That's always a possibility, right? And give a little back and forth. Because if you came in at 3.2 right away, first of all, you're paying 3.2 and you probably could have gotten a little bit of a reduced price. People are normally willing to flex on their asking price, at least 5%. You're getting a worse price and you're not going to make the seller feel great about it. But if you go back and forth a little bit, the seller will feel better about a well-negotiated 2.975 than a poorly negotiated 3.2 with no negotiations, no back and forth. I promise it's weird, but that's the psyche of how people work in negotiations. And it's important for you to know that. There needs to be a little bit of a back and forth normally. So from here, you get your seller or you get your offer accepted, LOI accepted. I normally like to get the LOI signed because for me, the way I do business, I'm very much, my word is really important to me. And so when I, shake someone's hand on something or sign an LOI, I like to follow through on it. That's really important to me. And so if you're an honest person and you can build good relationships and rapport with the people that you're doing business with, if you have someone sign an LOI, regardless of it being binding or non-binding, and they start questioning the fact that they want to sell this property or trying to change their mind, you could say, hey, look, we signed an LOI. We had an agreement, and you agreed to me. You signed this. Regardless of whether it's binding or not, it plays a role in people's mindset of, hey, I did agree to this, and I did sign something saying I agreed to this. So, it helps in some scenarios. So always try to get a LOI signed if you can. But from here, you're going to send this LOI to your attorneys. They are going to put together a purchase agreement for you, a contract, and you're going to take that contract, send it over to the seller, or the seller is going to send the LOI to their attorney. Oftentimes I like to just have my attorneys do it because I like the contracts that we use. They protect me really well. I want to start with, here are the terms that I want. And a purchase agreement is going to be much more in depth, have a ton more terms and options, and details and seller responsibilities and buyer responsibilities. And it's going to be much more, and it's going to be actually legally binding contract. So you need to get to a purchase agreement as soon as possible after you have an LOI signed. You need to lock the deal up. The deal is not locked till a purchase and sale agreement is signed. So that is the process of an LOI. Some strategies, negotiation tips, a little bit there. I'm not going to go too deep in all that stuff, but play around with this. I was not a professional at making offers in the beginning. It really just took practice at doing it time and time again to get good at it. And one of the things that I would suggest you do is make an offer on every property, regardless of, hey, in 2022 right now, we're in a really hot market. Things are expensive. People are asking crazy prices. Make an offer on every property, regardless of if you're far away or not. It gives sellers the proper expectations. We need to put sellers in their place right now. People want such high prices. Please send in LOIs at prices that are realistic so that we can bring them back down to a realistic place of, hey, your property's not worth 3.7. It's worth 2.7. And they need to know that. So sending in offers helps do that, helps guide the process. And who knows? They may change their mind and say, hey, you know what? I was unrealistic. I'm a little bit more willing to sell this property for a lower price now. So always make the offer, always make the ask. Learn negotiation through practice. It's just going to take time. It's something that you could read about all day and study strategies and tips, but it's something you will only master by doing. It's the art of doing. You've got to do it. And this is sending in LOIs. So very key part to the process of buying apartments. And I hope this helps you guys get some offers locked up. Next section, we'll talk about purchase agreements.